Today is January 19th, 2023. I must say it's still strange to say 2023, and this is Conversations from Stritch. I'm David Livingston, president of Lewis University, and I'm joined by our provost, Dr. Christopher Sint, which we do now almost going on 3 years together. This is exciting to be back in studio in the new calendar year. Happy New Year to everyone. It's been so great to see everybody back on campus and back in classes, whether you're here on campus or in a virtual class. We're really glad that you are back in the classroom learning again, and we hope everybody had a restful break that I hope was also rejuvenating. As a part of something that we're doing regularly, I want to also re-invite all of our employees this afternoon. At 4 o'clock in the flight deck, we are having chicken and waffles and celebrating the new year. So we hope everybody can join us. You can still RSVP to HR if you want to come, or you can just stop over. On Monday this week, we celebrated Martin Luther King holiday. It is an opportunity for us as a community and us as a country to celebrate the life of someone who really helped define a new understanding of the value of civil rights and nonviolent resistance, as well as the long legacy of slavery and racial injustice that has haunted us as a country for 400 years almost. So we are glad as a community to celebrate. I think it really is a reminder, and we'll be talking about this more with our guest, of the vision of the possibility of how we can both focus on equity and inclusion and the issues that surround ongoing legacy of slavery, as well as the ongoing issues of prejudice and racism that exist in our society. But we as a community really are trying to embrace and stay committed to our commitment to solidarity with all those people that are suffering under any form of prejudice. So we'll again get into that more, but glad to be able to be back here 2 weeks into the semester. We're almost done with our second week, which is really hard to believe. So, but we do have a lot of events going on campus and a lot of things to celebrate. So we usually take a little bit at the beginning of the show to talk about accomplishments of our faculty and students.
Yes, hello everyone, great to be with you. Happy New Year. I do have a few news items to mention as we're coming into some great news coming into the month of January. On Saturday, January 14th, as part of the Martin Luther King holiday, staff and faculty from Lewis participated in a program at the Joliet Area Historical Museum, along with, I should have said staff and students and faculty as well, along with community members from Second Baptist Church, Mount Zion Baptist Church, the National Hookup of Black Women, Joliet Chapter, and the Warren Sharp Community Center in a presentation celebrating the legacies of slavery and the history of African American citizens in that region, which is connected to a grant that Lewis has received about a year ago, and it was a part of the demonstration of the work that's coming out of that grant, collecting oral histories from members of those communities through those organizations. Dr. Demis Kremen, professor of history, and Morgan Jennings, student grant coordinator from Lewis, gave an overview of their grant-funded project. It's called From the Past to the Future, Reclaiming the African American Narrative, and a wonderful event, community event in a great location, and again, connected to both the grant but also to the holiday weekend. February 28th is the deadline for students to apply for the Dream.US scholarship at Lewis University. The full tuition scholarship is for academically qualified and highly motivated high school or community college students who meet the current immigration eligibility criteria, including DACA or TPS status. Lewis University is a partner college of the Dream.US DUS and the nation's largest college access and success program for Dreamers. This partnership provides scholarships to qualified immigrant students who came to this country as young children or as dreamers. The Dream.us is the nation's largest scholarship program that supports undocumented immigrant students who have deferred action for childhood arrivals, DACA, or temporary protected status. And then for a complete listing of eligibility requirements and application information, visit the Dream.usa website to submit an application before the due date, which again is February 28th. And we'll announce that a couple more times before that deadline approaches. It gets closer. For the spring 2023 semester, the LaSallian University's Center for Education, Luce, in Rome will serve a record 22 college students. President Livingston and I got to meet them sometime in the past. Was it in January? I think it was when we met with them. It feels, who knows?
Just a week ago, but...
Okay, it was a week ago. The most students we've had in the Rome program since the program began 5 years ago. Most students are from Lewis University, while 3 students are also from Manhattan College, one of our sister LaSallian institutions. The students live in the Generalate, the mother house of the De La Salle Christian Brothers in Rome, and its wonderful grounds and facilities provide a safe and ideal place to study and explore a home base to explore the great city of Rome. They use Rome as their classroom, as well as travel to Assisi and other sites, taking classes there at the Generalate. They draw on the rich culture and history of Rome, and our own faculty are there teaching, as well as Italian faculty who teach Italian, Italy Today, and art appreciation in Rome. So that we wish them our best and really appreciate the work that so many people do to make that happen. 2 mentions of Dr. Demis Kremen. He is the faculty director of the program, as well as Joanne Kuttner, thank you, from Religious Studies, who is also part of the team that's taking them to Rome. So best of luck to all of them, and we look forward to checking in with them once they get started. So we have some events.
We do, and just a little comment on especially on the study abroad. We did have that great opportunity to meet the students, but there's also so many other opportunities. So Luce is one of them. And I just would invite all of our students, as well as potentially faculty who want to learn more about it. Chris Swanson's been on our program before, but opportunities for faculty to take short trips. I know John Kilpatrick, who helps us out in studio, he takes students short trips, but these opportunities for student study abroad, we both said that it was so transformational in our own lives. Some events, so moving on from that, those students are in Rome, because I think they actually left either yesterday or today. Yeah. They might be flying out today, actually, to Rome. The 6th Annual High School Art Invitational closes today, so local high school artists have their talent displayed in the Brent and Jean Wadsworth Family Gallery. That is our gallery on campus. It's open until 9 p.m. Area high school students from 10 high schools are featured in the show with 47 different pieces of artwork consisting of multimedia, sculpture, painting, drawing, photography, etching, as well as digital illustration. And that digital illustration, is something that we're becoming much better at. January 21st, 1 p.m., men's and women's swimming will be up against St. Ambrose. And that is going to be here on campus. Also, January 22nd, at 7 p.m. in the Studio Theater, there's an open mic night. So, that's just a fun opportunity for those of you that either want to watch your friends be a part of that, or maybe participate yourself. January 24th, coming up next week at 3:30 in De La Salle, we have the Educator Rising group meeting. And we also have the Women in Cybersecurity on January 25th at 3 p.m. in the Red Room. Wellness Wednesday is also on stalking prevention. That'll take place next week in the Red Room. Men's and women's basketball are traveling this weekend to McKendree and to Maryville. Again, up and down season for both of them. We were talking just before the show started about this just incredibly painful double overtime loss for the women. against one of the better teams in the country. Men's and women's track competes at the Notre Dame Invitational this weekend. The indoor season is well underway. I was just talking to one of our coaches, and that season is beginning. It's kind of in its middle form, and they will have nationals in about a month. Swimming's in the same boat, where they're about 3 weeks away from the conference meet. So if you haven't been out to see indoor track or watch them online or seen the swimmers, either watch them online or come and visit one of the home meets before the season closes up. Men's volleyball competes against Stanford tonight and Pepperdine on Saturday. They're down in Austin, Texas for the First Point Collegiate Challenge. So a lot of athletics going on, but as we said, a lot of activities for students, both, all the clubs and organizations are back up and running, and there's a lot of opportunities for students to kind of get re-engaged, so we're excited about that. We do want to remind people about askus@lewisu.edu. Just showed up on the screen there. So opportunities for people to send in questions for our guest, and I'll turn it over to Chris to introduce our guest. We're really excited to have our guest with us today.
I'm really excited to do that. Before I do that, I want to say two things. So chicken and waffles followed by going to the high school art show.
Yes.
Is an obvious
Yeah.
pathway for
Well
people
done.
to take on
Well
their way
done.
out today. And then also a reminder, as you said, that there's many student activities going on. We didn't describe them all,
No.
so please refer to the calendar. And there's a great function in our new updated website, which allows you to search for only student events or only staff and faculty events and so on. So if you're a student watching and are interested in other club activities that we might not have mentioned, they're out there, and please check that out. So I am really pleased to introduce our guest, Dr. Katherine Helm Lewis, our Interim Chief Diversity Officer, and we're all excited to have a conversation today. Dr. Helm Lewis is a professor of psychology and director of the Clinical Mental Health Counseling Program at Lewis. She served as a DEI consultant, presenter, and trainer for multiple organizations such as TransUnion, the American Psychological Association, the Illinois Counseling Association, and local private practices offering mental health services to diverse populations. She's been actively involved in Lewis's diversity initiative since 2001 and has a consistent record of scholarship on diversity issues. So, Kathy, welcome.
Thank
It's wonderful
you.
to be here with you and
Thank you so much for having
to
me.
be talking about these things.
Well, and I want to say not only welcome, and I'm so glad you're here, but I'm so glad you said yes when I asked you to do this role a few months ago. Dr. Christy Kelly was on the show multiple times with Chris and I over the last few years, and she served the university so well, but she had a great opportunity, and all of us are, friends with Christy and professional colleagues, and wish her nothing but the best. But then we were in a situation, I was in a situation, the university was a situation, the leadership team, where we really wanted somebody, and you have played such a great leadership role in the DEC, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit. And so you seemed like the logical person, and I'm just so grateful that you were willing to take on this role until we can find a permanent Chief Diversity Officer. So thank you for being here, but thank you even more importantly for taking on this role.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the opportunity. I'm sure all of us are still working through our abandonment issues with Dr. Kelly, but we definitely wish her well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So one thing we like to do when we have guests on the show is really get to know them a little bit and introduce them to the community. Sure. You've been here over 20 years.
I have.
So a lot of people know you, but it's a big enough university when people come and go that there might be people who don't know you well and who are watching or will watch. So just maybe tell us a little bit about what you teach,
Sure.
what classes you teach,
Sure.
to begin with.
So when I first got here, I primarily taught undergraduate classes and then one grad class, the Multicultural Issues in Counseling class, which I still teach today. So I got the chance to teach all kinds of undergraduate psychology classes, which was a lot of fun, right? And then, I sort of transitioned to teaching more grad classes in our clinical mental health counseling program.
Yep.
And then when our program went up for accreditation, they said the program director should really just teach graduate classes. And
Okay.
so I've sort of transitioned over time. But I love teaching. It's my favorite thing to do. So whether I'm teaching undergraduate classes, which unfortunately I don't get to do anymore, or grad classes, it's just a lot of fun.
So before we move on, could you just tell us, especially our viewers, a little bit about that graduate program?
Sure.
And what kind of students go into it? And equally important, because we always want to give a pitch for people joining a program.
Yeah.
So what could they do after they get that? So tell me a little bit about what the program does, who our students currently are,
Sure.
kind of, I don't know, age and kind of, and
Yeah.
then what they do after they leave.
Sure. So I think, not to be biased, but I think we do a good job because all of us are practitioners. We get a lot of students who were undergraduates with us, and then we also get about half students who didn't go to Lewis for undergrad.
Right.
I think our program really prepares students for the field of counseling. They end up working in hospitals, private practices, any number, community mental health centers, any number of mental health settings. We've noticed a trend over the last several years since COVID that a lot of our students, they have to do a field placement, a practicum and internship, where they actually see clients as part of getting their degree, and they're getting job placements right out of those sites, right? And so since COVID, given the number of mental health issues, that everybody is going through, our students, the job placement rate has gone through the roof, which is a really good thing.
It's great. It's great to hear.
And what is this accreditation that you're talking about?
K-CREP
I'm being
accreditation,
ironic.
yeah. Please don't ask me what it all stands for. But K-CREP accreditation, in that process, I had some great colleagues working with me to get that done. Took quite a long time, but we are a fully accredited program.
And what does that mean?
So what it means is it allows our students to take their degrees and move from state to state more easily. We call that portability of licensure. And in the job market, for some places, they look for that, so it makes it easier for them to get licensed in the state of Illinois. And then it also makes it easier for them to move their degree around. And if they're going to doctoral programs that are looking for that, that's also an asset.
It's great.
It's
Yeah.
a huge accomplishment, and you did such an amazing job over several years to do all the work that goes into that
Yeah.
that
Had a
complicated
lot of
accreditation.
help. Yeah.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
lots of help. So and then maybe just tell us a little bit about your scholarship and what
Sure.
you focus on.
Sure. So a lot of my early scholarship focused on multicultural issues in pedagogy and how to sort of teach about those things in the classroom. And then my work began to transition where I started looking at people of color, LGBTQIA plus communities, and I do a lot of couples counseling. And so Lewis has always been a great place to be because it allowed me to combine my practitioner side with my teacher scholar side. So now I'm doing a lot of research and working with couples of color and presenting on those because a lot of times the models that we learn don't take into account the context in which these couples exist. And so that's kind of what I'm into now.
It's great. It's really great. So, and this is in some sense for both of you. I want to focus certainly on you as our guest, but the two of you have really been deeply involved with Dr. Kelly on the DEC. So maybe you can describe what that is, who's on it, what it stands for, what it means for the institution, and then some of the, some of the things that that you've been involved in, and maybe progress, and still we're always on the journey.
Yeah.
What do we hope for in terms of But let's start with just your involvement, both of your involvement, because you've kind of co-chaired it now since Christy has left. What does it do? What role does it play on the campus? So maybe just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll start with
Yeah,
that.
sure.
So it stands for Diversity Engagement Committee. It is a group of individuals from the campus, staff and faculty, who are dedicated, over the years, as it's Kathy's been on it for a long time, has really been individuals in our community who are committed to doing the work of diversity and inclusion. And it's also individuals who are experts in some way in these fields. Kathy just described her expertise, but also staff on campus who work deeply in these areas in student life or in Title IX or what have you. It's often people who are really charged as leaders of the institution along those lines. It's also representative of the campus in terms of faculty from different colleges across the campus, so that different issues that come up in different parts of the campus are often raised. And it is the mission or the charge of the committee is to advance our strategy around making progress toward being a more diverse and inclusive and equitable organization, and that comes in many forms, and we'll talk about some of the initiatives, but that's the general.
That's great.
And then maybe what are we working on?
Yeah, I was gonna. And again, you don't need to be exhaustive in that, but like, what
Sure.
are what's been worked on over the last few years? What have been some of our successes that you've seen in the time that you've been on it?
Yeah. So this is a very passionate, committed group of very smart people who are working on any number of things, both sort of, at the college level, at the university level. A few things that we've been working on that, Chris and Christy spearheaded, right? One is the Train the Trainer program, which, I'm actively involved in. I got a chance to train Chris and some others on campus. So over, I think this summer, Christy and I participated in this. An outside consultant came in and trained the two of us on how to give a couple of trainings, one on unconscious bias and the other on inclusive leadership. And the charge is to sort of go out and train other faculty, staff, and administrators so that they can sort of contribute to our efforts on making our campus a more inclusive place, right? So part of the goal of the training is to have people serve as equity advocates on search committees to sort of make sure we are really strengthening our efforts to be inclusive. And sort of allowing all of us to be aware of how bias might operate in the search process, as well as just, kind of being a diversity advocate for our campus community in general.
Right. And so I want to go back to one of those things, because I think we would say as a Lewis University community that many members of our community might know what the term unconscious bias means.
Sure.
And the whole point of this is many members don't.
Yeah.
So now we have this platform.
Okay.
We want to use many platforms.
Yeah.
Can you just give us the quick, 1 minute version, 1.5 minute version of what is unconscious bias, so that students, parents, employees who are watching this can have a sense of what would that entail?
So I think unconscious bias really is about preferences that we may not know that we have that may operate sometimes in a discriminatory way. So for example, and this is not unconscious, but I have a strong bias for the type of toothpaste that I use. I'm very serious about that, by the way.
I didn't know
Right,
that.
yes. And everybody has some type of preference for things, but then there's sort of ways that we are unaware that these preferences might be operating. So we might have a preference for particular people of a certain age, right, or a certain type of candidate. So when we advertise a position, we might have a certain type of individual in mind. And if it doesn't come in the package that we think that it should, oftentimes we may act out on that bias that might be unaware of, and that really influences who we bring to campus and the types of people we might be selecting. Everybody has unconscious bias.
And so I think part of this, because I've been through some unconscious bias training, is step number one is raising it from unconscious to conscious.
Exactly.
Right, knowing that you like this toothpaste.
Exactly.
Right?
I'm very clear about that.
If
Yes.
I know that I have a bias towards this type of person when I do hiring,
Yes.
then I can at least own it, state it among a group of people, and say, this is my bias, and now we're going to work to try to eliminate that.
Exactly.
Right? That's
Exactly.
part of that whole
I
thing.
think we get into trouble when we assume that we don't have biases, and we do. And we're not always aware of the biases we have and how they operate to change our perceptions of things, our behavior.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And this is one of those, I would say, deep legacies of racism, is that that is the first confrontation. People will say, I don't have biases. Like I was in a conversation the other day with somebody, and I said, well, everything's interpretation. And this guy said, no, it's not. And I said, well, but, and we just could not meet in the middle, because from his point of view, there's just truth.
Yes.
and there's no interpretation of it's just true or not true. And I think this is the same thing. Some people do not believe they walk around with biases.
Yes.
And that is very difficult sometimes to overcome, but it's step number one.
It is.
Right?
It really is. You
In this
can't
work.
confront what you're not always aware of, right? But I think that, part of the trainings is to get people to not only become more aware of them, but to really listen and be open to learning. And, I've been able to give some of the trainings already to some very receptive groups, and we've had some really productive dialogues around them.
That's great.
Yeah.
And maybe we should say we're really focusing on, establishing this group of equity advocates who do many things, including train, but really we are focusing on search committees because we value, we recognize that we're losing opportunities to find great, productive members of our community as a result of some of the biases that we all have unconsciously. And so maybe I just wanted to make sure we're saying that out loud, that that's why we're doing it. It has all kinds of positive impacts for our community, for our lives, for our culture, but we're really kind of focused on, that because when we hire new members of our community, it's such an incredible opportunity to bring, new perspectives into a particular department or a unit on campus, and we really want to take the most advantage of that as we possibly can. So, so we are about to announce or send out an email.
We are.
Inviting people to apply to become equity advocates. So
Yes.
please be on the lookout for that. We're not don't have any materials about it today, but that's going to be exciting to build that group.
We are. So we're looking for interested faculty, staff, and administrators. There'll be an application process, which DEC is in the process of completing. And it will be disseminated probably within about a month or so. This is a 2-year commitment. So, we expect a lot, but we have so much talent here at Lewis that we can use.
Yes.
And, there's, you'll write an essay, there'll be an interview. After you're trained, you'll be expected to kind of give the unconscious bias trainings and the inclusive leadership trainings, as well as sit on search committees as they come up as sort of equity advocates.
So would either of you want to talk about, since you're our guest and Chris is here all the time, but either one, you may both add, how would you describe inclusive leadership? So we talked a little bit about unconscious bias. What does it mean to be an inclusive leader from your point of view?
Well, I think it starts from the premise of being inclusive in the first place. And I liked during the training, the trainer told Christy and I that inclusiveness is not about beliefs, it's about people. So being inclusive of people even when you don't believe as they believe, right, or have different values, right? And I think that leaders really have the opportunity to shape not only who they work with, but also the campus community as a whole. So being inclusive is about being aware of the language that you use, being aware of sort of your own biases, I think, and also being aware of embracing differentness and really being more welcoming. So I think those are the things that we really look at when we talk about being more inclusive. And we have work to do, right? All of us have work to do. Because we can all improve in that area.
I feel like in some ways it's similar to what we ask, similar to what I already said about hiring, but also similar to what we ask professors to do in the classroom, where you create an environment where individuals in the class feel that they can contribute to the conversation or to whatever the subject is at their highest level, and that they're really being heard, and that their experience, the way they do it, the way they contribute their knowledge or their learning is understood or recognized by the teacher in that case. But I think the leadership is very similar, where you're creating an environment where people can disagree respectfully, they can have dialogue, they can think about their own biases and think about other people's experiences while they're having that dialogue. And the assumption behind that, and there's lots of research around this, is that organizations function at higher levels when more ideas can be can come out of meetings or teams that have to work together and so on.
So I'd love to hear again either one of you talk about what I guess what I would term as this journey So, and I'm going to use just one example. So we've had this sanctified zone statement for a long time on campus. And what I hear you saying, both of you saying, is that there's also a professionalizing is maybe not the right word, but one can make a commitment, right? And it reminds me of Martin Luther King this week, right? So we have this dream, but we have to make it a reality. And part of making it a reality is becoming better at actually doing it, meaning learning about unconscious bias, training people in that, and then training the community. So I'm not saying that our sanctified statement is perfect, but it is a statement that has been in the ground for a long time. And we say, and then we also have our values, our Lasallian values. Those really define us as an institution. But I'd love for you to talk about, because I think in this whole area of diversity, equity, and inclusion, understanding that we're on a journey as opposed to believing it's kind of binary, like you're either a good institution who cares about diversity, equity, inclusion, or you're an institution that doesn't. And that's not the reality. The reality is we're always going to be on this journey.
Yep.
Which is also scary to people.
Yep.
Like, when am I going to get there?
Yeah.
Right? When am I going to get rid of institutional racism?
Yeah.
And if the answer is you're not ever, that's scary for people. So I'd love to hear either one of you talk about that, how we absorb that even as human beings and as a culture, as a university community. How do we understand that we're on a journey?
Yeah.
And then what does it mean to get better at it, even if we know we're never going to get there?
Yeah. So I think our sanctified zone statement is aspirational, right? We're always working towards that goal, right? Institutions that can really look at themselves and sort of deep dive into where are we, where were we, what do we do well, what do we need to work on? In some ways it's uncomfortable to think we'll never get there, but on the other hand, aren't we always striving for something, right? Do we ever fully reach a goal or, and then do we set another one? And so, institutional racism, has a significant history. It has a significant impact, right? We're not going to eradicate it overnight, but I think that being dedicated to doing so is a worthy goal and sort of at the heart of being inclusive, including people, recognizing past hurts, past traumas, right? And working to rectify them.
Yeah.
I think it's often, and we've been looking, the two of us have been talking and the DEC has been talking and looking at models around how to assess ourselves, and this is kind of goes to that. It reminded me of that when you asked that question. And a lot of the models of evaluation of organizations more than individual people are about this kind of spectrum, from having clear signs of policies that are exclusive or racist, which is rare. And then this other end of the spectrum is inclusion, which is a ideal that you never reach. And in between, typically, is where everyone is, but typically you go from things that are somewhat superficial, language, descriptions of ourselves, and the sanctified statement is beautiful, and people might say it's words if we don't live up to it, which is better than not having it, but it's words. And then that next area of growth, where we may be now, but also maybe for years as we continue to improve, is that kind of systemic place that Kathy was describing, where where is exclusion inscribed in the way we do things as an organization, and where we just, as much as we try, we can't see it until it gets revealed, and then we have to do a bunch of work to undo that system in some way and redo it. And I think that's probably where we're at, but we're also still discovering things and causing things, perhaps.
And I think that you use the word, it's revealed. So those revelations, like I find this really important, and it's been a key component of my personal spiritual journey. My own life is trying to be a person who's focused on making the world a more just place, and I've done that in all sorts of ways. I used to do stuff on men's studies and trying to understand gender, and done all sorts of different areas. But I think that revealing or the revelation, I think some people that don't have this appreciation of the journey become very frustrated, because they more are in the initial mode that you said, Chris, which is tell me what I have to do. And then when I change my policy, like you've said, the policy should read like this instead of like this because this is racist or it's prejudiced or it's not inclusive. And now I change it. And now can I just be done with that and go about my merry way? But what happens all the time is these revelations, right? So there's, in the sense that somebody says, I feel like I'm not being included, for instance. But I didn't know that 2 years ago, that you felt excluded. And all of a sudden I got to do more work. So there's this exhaustion factor in this work. And I feel like it, again, is really connected to King's speech and King's life and legacy, as well as, of course, so many other people who have been negatively impacted by a lack of inclusion or discrimination or prejudice or racism, is that there can be this sense of just exhaustion in the face of this ongoing need to create more justice, because it feels like it's always there. So I don't know if you have any comments about your own journeys, because I feel like that's a challenge for everybody that works in these areas. I mean, most people that I know that are advocates for justice, they sometimes have to take time for themselves to rejuvenate themselves because the work is really exhausting.
Sure. Well, I would say most definitely. For many years, I was the only person of color teaching in the room in teaching my multicultural issues and counseling class. There would be several semesters where I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is really, really difficult because you're reading things that are hurtful, right? That at least in my training of mental health professionals, they will go out in the world, and if those things get perpetuated with the clients that they serve, can be really hurtful and really, really damaging. So I would say that all of us are in a journey. It's a worthwhile journey. I think that most people wouldn't set out to hurt people, but sometimes we inadvertently do. And our ability to look at that and our ability to try to make change, I mean, nobody hopefully stays stagnant, is really important. I think it's one of our institutional values. And it, at least the people I've come into contact with at Lewis, it's one of the values that many people hold. Even if the journey is exhausting.
Yeah, I agree. It's a very large, very engaged community now, I think, working in this area. There's a flip side to what you're saying too, which is also challenging, which is that people who are devoting their lives to this work don't love it when I say, oh, we're working on it now and we're going to be working on it in the future, and the change is slow, because sometimes that sounds like a excuse for going slow around change, and so I think that kind of calibrating the pace of growth and development is a leadership. It's something we should be teaching in the leadership training for sure.
And I know we need to wrap things up because we're getting near end of time, and I'd like to give you both. But maybe that comment reminds me of one of my favorite lines from King, which is the kind of fierce urgency of now. So that sense of the fierce urgency of now, and I think at the same time, the understanding that it will always be there, right? So how do you maintain those two things, right? This sense of, we gotta fix this now because people are being harmed, and it's gonna, your comment, it's gonna take a long time and it'll be here in 10 years. And that's not an excuse for not feeling the fierce urgency of now. It's a reality check, right? As hard as we work, there will be other issues of inclusion and diversity that will arise. Go ahead, Kathy.
I try to remind myself that we are here for our students, right? I mean, none of us would be here if it weren't for our students. And do we want our students to walk into our classrooms where they don't feel represented, they don't feel heard, right? They don't feel like they're being included, and most of us do not want that environment for them. And so as our student population changes, and it is, we also have to change, right? Not only because I think it's the right thing to do, but also because these are who our students are, right? And they deserve to come to a campus community where they feel safe enough to express and be who they are and see themselves reflected in their staff, faculty, and administrators.
Right.
So you've been probably meeting more people.
I have been.
How has that been going?
You know, it's been going well. You know, I thank you both for the opportunity, and it's given me the opportunity to not only work with more people on DEI issues, but also sort of get in touch with aspects of the university that as a faculty member or even as kind of a program director, I don't normally get an opportunity to do. So I'm working with David Cronin, the head of HR, and we're developing a module on inclusiveness. I am working with Dr. Shackmuth on sort of more thoroughly and comprehensively integrating DEI issues in new faculty and employee orientations. And so you know, it's been busy, but it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah,
I mean, thank you so much for doing that. I love that,
great.
hearing about that, meeting new people. I think we're almost done.
Yeah,
I feel like
yeah.
I have one last
Please,
thing that
go
I
ahead.
can't not say, which is that this topic, I love hearing about Kathy's research or your research, because another thing I think people sometimes overlook is that this is an academic field. Diversity, the study of the impact of, you know, however you want to say it, exclusion on individuals is something that that professors study, publish, and continue to learn about, because it's I don't know, it's a 50-year-old field or something like that. It's not the classics or something. And so we're still learning all kinds of new things all the time. And that's another reason why the work is still, you know, perpetual, because I feel like we have to, in addition, I thought of that when you talked about how our student population is changing. But we're also discovering new ways of understanding these issues through the great scholarship of our faculty across the country, and including at Lewis. So
I love being involved in a field that gets to, you know, constantly be talking about these issues and then see it go out into the real world in terms of how students get to interact in the professional realm.
Yeah, I think that's it's such a rich opportunity. I mean, we work in a place that is, I mean, you know, filled with amazing professionals, yourself being one of them. But I think Chris and I, you know, neither one of us get the joy, and it really was a joy for me, and I know it was for Chris, of being in the classroom with students, you know, week in and week out. But we do get that opportunity that you're talking about of meeting more people. Like we meet a lot of people. You know, we have 600 full-time people, 1,000 professionals who work with us day in and day out to deliver a great experience for our students. And it's really a privilege, because some of them are really focused on this as a discipline. Like it's what their research is, it's what they care about, or professionally, it's what they do every day, right? It's what they focus on every day, and yourself being one of those. So it really is you know, being a part of a university community is just such a gift, I think, and it doesn't, we're imperfect in all sorts of ways, but that imperfection is also part of the pleasure of it all. Yeah.
all right, well, thank you.
So maybe on that note,
Well, thank you for having me.
thank you so much for being here, Kathy,
Thank you.
and thank you for your role as Chief Diversity Officer. And, you know, as I said to you at the beginning, you know, it won't be forever. We're going to be doing a search soon.
Yes.
Right.
People in the
Yes.
community will know that. I think that's important to say here, is that
that's right.
we'll be doing a national search for a new Chief Diversity Officer. And we're really hoping that somebody will start by July 1. But, you know, again, it's all about the candidate pool and going through
Yes.
this whole process in a very...
And it'll be full time.
And it'll be full-time, yeah, so it's exciting. Thank you both. Thank you to everyone who's watching. We're just really grateful again that everybody's back. It's exciting to be into 2023. And I wish you a wonderful, you know, weekend. And we're grateful for all that you do for the campus, being a member of this community. And we will keep striving to be a more inclusive and a more welcoming place that really focuses on justice, as we're committed to. They're not just words. So many blessings to you and your family. Have a wonderful weekend.